Okay, so let's dive into something that feels, well, pretty fundamental to being human, right? This need to confess.
Absolutely. It's like this ancient impulse.
Yeah, whether it was, whispering secrets in a confessional or just finally telling a friend something heavy, there's this real release in admitting you've done something wrong or you're carrying a secret you just can't hold anymore.
Exactly. It gets right to the core of that weight, the weight that guilt and secrecy put on us, that burden. It can be huge.
Hmm.
And just the act of saying it, putting those hidden things into words, it can genuinely feel like dropping something heavy.
And today we're going to explore that impulse, but through a very modern lens. We've been digging into an online community built entirely around public confession, though it's anonymous. It's Cringe Your Confession on Reddit.
It's a fascinating setup, isn't it? Anonymous, but also completely public.
Right. So our mission here is to really unpack these raw admissions. They go from stuff that seems kind of minor, maybe, all the way to things that have completely changed lives.
Yeah, we want to figure out why people turn to a place like this, to share their deepest secrets. And what do all these confessions, when you look at them together, what do they tell us about guilt, shame, regret?
And maybe that search for understanding. Or just relief.
Exactly.
Relief.
So let's start by just getting a feel for the space itself.
Yeah.
What does this community actually define as a confession? Because they're pretty specific.
They are, yeah. And that tells you a lot, I think. Rule 1 says a confession has to be admitting an illegal or immoral action.
Okay.
And crucially, it has to be something the person intentionally did.
Intentionally, right.
And something other people don't already know about.
So intentionality is key. It's not about accidents or mistakes. And there's one more vital piece to that definition.
Yes, the poster must express regret. Right there in the post.
Ah, okay.
If there's no regret shown, they don't see it as a true confession for their community.
That definitely narrows things down. And they also spell out what is not a confession there. Yeah, rule 1, again, it's not for just, random thoughts or dreams or opinions or innocent mistakes.
Can't confess someone else's bad deeds either.
Nope. Has to be your secret, your intentional act. And they roll out other big topics, too, like relationships in Rule 4, politics in Rule 7. They really seem to want to keep it focused just on that personal wrongdoing and the weight it carries.
So, given those rules, intentional, secret, and showing regret, why this specific online space, what's the appeal of sharing anonymously but publicly?
Well, I think seeking release is massive. You might have a secret that's just eating you up inside, but you absolutely cannot tell the people involved for whatever reason. Anonymity gives you that safety net, to just get it out.
It's a way to lighten that load without facing potentially huge real-world fallout from the people you hurt or lied to.
Yeah, and their description even says it's a place to help one another. So there's this hope, maybe, for some kindness, or finding someone who gets it, or just understanding from strangers who aren't part of your daily life. No judgment attached, sort of.
Like a psychological pressure valve. Let the steam out without causing a personal explosion.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And what's interesting is, even though they demand regret from the poster, the community response often isn't just about condemnation. It's often more about relating or offering a different viewpoint or just acknowledging that we all mess up sometimes.
Which brings us to some of the actual confessions.
Yeah.
And wow, some of these cut deep.
Yeah.
They involve really significant lies and the ripple effects they have. These aren't minor things.
No, they carry real weight. That post from Gullible Morning 4969 about her mother lying about an eviction, that's a really stark one. This user, she's 27, 2 kids, had moved back with her parents to save money while finishing school.
And she wakes up one morning, not gently, but her sister bursts in saying, "Pack your stuff, you've got 2 hours, we're being evicted."
2 hours, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the mother first tries to deflect, like, "Oh, I didn't think it was real, must be a scam." But eventually she admits she knew the house was going to be taken. The user and her dad think it was maybe over a year of missed mortgage payments.
And the father situation. Gosh, that just makes it harder to hear. He worked constantly, 6 days a week, overtime. Paid that mortgage for 17 years.
17 years.
And finds out he's lost his home right after work on the day they get kicked out.
Just awful. The mother apparently gave some story about a dodgy company in California and a mortgage modification program she applied for during COVID.
Which the user points out doesn't really add up.
No, especially because they weren't in dire financial straits. The dad made enough, and he'd even seen some red flags, like the mortgage paperwork changing, his wife grabbing it quickly, her stopping sharing bank statement screenshots.
The signs were there, but she kept up the deception.
And apparently this wasn't a one-off. The user talks about a pattern. Her brother ended up with garnished wages because the mom kept signing off on disability checks after he was back at work, like a $15,000 debt.
Whoa!
And her sister owed taxes on unemployment because the mom forgot to check the tax withholding box.
So it sounds like the family sees a pattern of pride, ego, can't admit mistakes, denies responsibility, lies.
Yeah, that's the family consensus described in the post. And the user says she's always been the one to call her out on it.
The confession ends with her just reeling, like actually homeless. Kids are okay with their dad, but her parents and the dogs are stuck in a motel.
It just slams home the impact, doesn't it? How one person's inability to face things, their deception, can just cascade through a whole family, generations even, the destructive power of that kind of secret.
But heavy stuff. Let's contrast that maybe with the confession from Anverglin, who lied about having chronic pain.
Right. This started a couple of years ago. They'd been laid off, felt mentally just, broken, useless, couldn't do the whole push-through hustle thing anymore.
So the lie started small.
Yeah, told a coworker about joint pain, but then it escalated on a Zoom call to being chronic.
And the reaction was unexpected.
Totally. People were suddenly super kind, supportive, offered grace, even admired them, calling them so strong for managing. And those passive-aggressive comments about sleeping in, they stopped.
Huh. So the lie worked, in a way.
It grew from there. Told their sister, their boss, even made up a specialist name. Everyone bought it, sending supportive stuff about invisible illness warriors.
Wow.
So now the confessor feels like a monster for lying, but also admits it felt necessary. Necessary to get the first real break in years.
It poses such a difficult question, doesn't it? What's worse, the lie itself, or feeling like you have to invent an illness just to get permission to rest in a world that demands constant productivity?
It really points a finger at societal pressure, you
Yeah.
know, where burnout or just needing a mental break isn't seen as legit, but a physical diagnosis somehow is.
Yeah. And we see other kinds of deception too, right? Like Miss Lady Human finding proof of cheating in deleted messages, discovering a secret.
Or, sure, Bookkeeper 204 grappling with the guilt of lying to friends about sleeping with someone. It shows the burden isn't just the initial lie, it's maintaining it. Or the weight of knowing you were lied to.
Okay, let's shift a bit. Let's look at confessions about specific actions people took. Sometimes they feel justified, sometimes the results are just weirdly unexpected.
That story from Dylan Brittany 306, getting back at a landlord, that fits the justification angle. They were in France, unpaid internship, paid a $900 deposit for a tiny place. Landlord promised to wire it back after they returned to the U.S., then ghosted them.
Oh, classic landlord move, unfortunately. So what did they do?
Fought back, reported the landlord to the French authorities, the labor and social security folks, and the tax office.
Okay, went official.
And discovered the landlord had been renting the place out illegally, basically, for 3 years,
Yep.
not declaring the income properly.
Uh-huh. So consequences for the landlord.
Big time. A fine over $5,000, an illegal notice saying they couldn't rent anymore without registering properly. The user definitely felt like they got justice. Their takeaway was literally, if you challenge me, I'll fight back.
But there was a catch, wasn't there? An
Yep.
unintended consequence?
Yeah. Their friend, who is still living there, had to move out because the landlord couldn't legally rent it anymore. It shows how even when you feel totally in the right, your actions can sometimes sideswipe other people.
Then there's the free beer incident from Reasonable Economy 786. That one's almost
Yeah.
funny, like an accidental crime.
Right. Happened when they were 15, at a wedding with a cousin, went to a store for more beer and snacks,
Okay.
put the snacks in the belt, but completely forgot about 2 full crates of beer still in the shopping cart. The cashier, young, probably swamped, only scanned the snacks. Total was like €5.
No way.
Yep. They paid, walked out with the cart, beer and all. Only realized outside that the beer hadn't been scanned.
Oh.
The confession talks about that accidental heist feeling, laughing about it, handing out the free beers back at the wedding. The intent was just to buy beer, but the oversight led to this. Well, this win for them at the time, even though it was technically theft.
Compare that to the parking spot confession from Hopeless Thoughts. That was purely intentional.
Totally. They saw another car signaling for a spot first, knew it, but took it anyway because they had a better angle.
Ouch. Why?
They admit they were in a really bad headspace, just got terrible news, felt like, I don't care, I hate everything right now.
Ah, Okay. So lashing out, kind of.
Yeah, and they knew immediately it was wrong, regretted it instantly, but stayed put. When the other driver tried to confront them, they just ignored them too embarrassed, probably didn't want the conflict.
And they still feel bad.
Yeah, I feel bad for taking their own misery out on some random person, and
Wow.
they fully expect karma, like someone's gonna steal their spot someday. It really shows that impulse driven by pain, the immediate regret, but also choosing to stick with it, and how even a small intentional wrong can stick with you.
And there were others. Right. Lying about a grandpa's stroke for a trip, popping bike tires because they were annoying,
Going naked in a gym sauna with a whole justification for it.
hiding in the airplane bathroom as a kid to avoid throwing up.
Or giving a daughter a jacket they found but saying it was thrifted. The range of things people feel they need to confess is just huge.
Which brings us to maybe the ones that linger the most, confessions about the past, especially from when people were young, that still cause real shame years later. Secrets that just won't let go.
That Omegle confessor from Equivalent 3510 is a really powerful example. Happened when they were about 15.
Okay.
Used Omegle chat to find adult men, swapped Kik accounts, sent nudes. Did this like twice a week for maybe a month.
Wow, that's risky.
Super risky. They took precautions, no face, no name, VPN. But what's striking is they say they weren't turned on by it at all. Found male anatomy freaky, later realized they're not even attracted to men.
So why do it?
The motivation they described was so much adrenaline, feeling so powerful, messing with their lives. They knew the men were weirdos doing something wrong. They even mentioned lying about being 18, thinking that somehow made it better. But now, years later, the feeling is intense shame. So embarrassed, it grosses them out. Ashamed, it hunts them. They really struggle to move past this thing they did as a teenager. It's that complex mix, right? Thrill, maybe perceived power at the time, followed by this deep, lasting shame.
Persistence is shame. We saw it in another one, too, about being rude to a classmate at 13.
Yeah, the butt slapping one. Happened almost 6 years ago. The user kept doing it to this guy, even after he said stop. Motive was wanting to troll him or be part of the fun. Admits they let it go on way too long.
Until the guy got really mad.
Yeah, threatened to hit them and they stopped immediately.
So, years pass.
Right. They've seen him since, went to the same school later, talked casually. The incident never came up. Seems like maybe the other guy forgot or just moved on.
But the confessor hasn't.
Not at all. Feels so ashamed even writing this. Feels 110% wrong about it. Stresses they've grown and matured since. But the struggle is internal, how to let go of that shame, even if the external impact seems gone.
It really shows how that internal burden can be totally separate from what others remember or feel. Sometimes forgiving yourself is the hardest part.
Absolutely. And we saw it again with Mundane Parsnip 3125, confessing to stealing from Target as a teen, maybe $150 worth over time, influenced by friends. They regret it now, years later.
And it's affecting them now.
Yeah, it's making them hesitate about reapplying for a job at that same Target, a past mistake influenced by peers, still casting this shadow on their choices today.
So, looking across all these confessions, from the small lies and petty acts to the huge deceptions, the personal struggles, the past stuff that still haunts people, it really covers a massive range of human experience.
It really does. We've seen the weight of secrets that wreck families, actions driven by complicated or dark emotions, weird situations from just mistakes, and that enduring sting of shame from things we did when we were young that still shapes us.
Diving into this raw, anonymous space, it reveals so much about us, doesn't it? The burdens of guilt and shame, the often messy reasons behind what we do, the sheer weight of secrets.
And underneath it all, I think it points back to that really basic human need, the need to connect, to share, to just say the hard stuff out loud and hope for some kind of understanding or relief, even if it's just from strangers online.
It really makes you wonder, though, in a world where so many of us carefully curate these perfect online lives, what does the existence, the popularity of a space like Support Confession tell us about the real cost of secrecy?
Yeah, and maybe, can you ever really get absolution from external validation? Or just from shouting your secrets into the anonymous internet void? It's definitely something to think about for yourself.